We often hear about ideals of liberty and self-governance when discussing the American Revolution. The stirring words of patriots, the fight against tyranny, and the birth of a new nation founded on democratic principles. But beneath this noble rhetoric lay a complex and often overlooked web of economic grievances that fueled the flames of rebellion. The fight for independence was not just about abstract freedom. It was profoundly about money, trade, and who controlled the burgeoning wealth of the American colonies. For centuries, European powers operated under a system known as mercantilism. This economic philosophy dictated that a nation's wealth and power were measured by its gold and silver reserves, accumulated through a favorable balance of trade. Colonies existed to serve the mother country, providing raw materials and a captive market for manufactured goods. Britain saw its American colonies as a vast resource farm and a guaranteed customer base, a crucial component of its global economic dominance. The Navigation Acts, enforced from the mid-17th century, were the cornerstone of this policy. These laws dictated that colonial goods could only be shipped on British vessels and often had to pass through British ports, incurring extra costs and duties. Certain valuable products, like tobacco, sugar, and cotton, known as enumerated goods, could only be exported to Britain, stifling direct trade with other nations and limiting colonial economic growth. The 7 Years' War, known in America as the French and Indian War, left Britain victorious but deeply in debt. The cost of defending its vast empire was immense, and Parliament sought to recoup these expenses. To cover these costs, Parliament began to extract more revenue from its American colonies, tightening its grip on colonial trade and imposing new, unprecedented taxes. The Stamp Act of 1765 was a watershed moment. It levied a direct tax on all printed materials, from newspapers and legal documents to playing cards, requiring a special stamp to be affixed. This was not a tax on trade, but a tax on everyday life, directly impacting merchants, lawyers, and printers, the very people who shaped public opinion and commerce. The outcry was immediate and widespread, sparking protests and boycotts that proved incredibly effective, forcing its repeal. However, the precedent for direct taxation had been set. Following the repeal of the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts introduced duties on imported goods like glass, lead, paints, paper, and tea. These taxes were designed to pay the salaries of colonial governors and judges, making them independent of colonial assemblies. This was seen as a direct assault on self-governance and economic control. In response, smuggling became rampant, a de facto economic resistance movement that undermined British authority and enriched colonial merchants who circumvented the duties. The Tea Act of 1773, though it actually lowered the price of tea, granted the struggling British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. This infuriated colonial merchants and smugglers, who saw their livelihoods threatened by a government-backed giant that could undercut their prices and control the market. The Boston Tea Party was not just a protest against taxation, it was a furious rejection of corporate monopoly and an assertion of colonial economic independence. By the mid-18th century, the American colonies were not just small outposts, they were thriving economies with growing industries in shipbuilding, fishing, and agriculture. Many colonists believed they could prosper far more without the restrictive chains of British mercantilism, free to trade with any nation and develop their own industries unhindered. Britain's response to the Boston Tea Party, the Coercive Acts, or Intolerable Acts, was designed to punish Massachusetts and reassert control. The Boston Port Act, in particular, closed Boston Harbor, crippling the city's economy. While the cry of "no taxation without representation" resonated deeply as a political principle, it was the economic implications of British policies that gave it teeth and galvanized widespread support for revolution. The desire for economic self-determination, the frustration with restrictive trade laws, and the burden of new taxes formed the bedrock of colonial discontent, uniting disparate colonies against a common oppressor. The American Revolution was a battle for political freedom, but equally, it was a struggle for economic liberation, laying the groundwork for the economic powerhouse America would become. Understanding these economic secrets provides a richer, more nuanced view of the birth of a nation, reminding us that liberty often comes with a price, and sometimes, that price is measured in pounds, shillings, and pence.